Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Stephanie Baxter, and I am the Director of Programming and Engagement here at the New Hampshire Tech Alliance. For those who don't know about the Tech Alliance, we are a technology association in New Hampshire dedicated to growing and engaging the tech ecosystem. We're really excited to have this webinar today, sponsored by one of our members, Cross Insurance. As you saw when you came in, this event is recorded and will be available on the Tech Alliance's YouTube page later this week. We have 3 presenters today. Each will give about a 10 to 15 minute presentation, and then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end that you can pop in the chat there. So I'm just going to give a very brief introduction to our presenters and let them tell you a little bit about themselves. So we have Todd Fitzgerald, who's a benefits consultant at Cross, Daniel Farley, a payroll development officer at Bangor Payroll, and Michelle Gray, owner of HR Synergy. So I will now turn it over to Todd and let him take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here today. And my name is Todd Fitzgerald. As Stephanie mentioned, I'm a benefits consultant with Cross Insurance. Been in the industry over 20 years. I do have experience in the carrier side of the business, having worked for Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare for 15 years. And then on the broker side, the consultant side with Cross Insurance for the last 6 years or so. So what we thought we would do today is really address the marketplace here in New Hampshire as far as the medical insurance is concerned. Whether you're an employer group of 5 employees or 75 employees, it can be very confusing out there what is available to you, what the employees are looking for. The carriers, some participate in the small group market, some don't. So we thought we'd just give a quick overview of the marketplace, and we're going to do it from a 2-pronged approach. One is if your employer, if you as an employer are under 50 full-time equivalent employees, and the other market update is going to be if you're over 50. This is really a delineation here, which it's a counting of your employees, your average monthly employees in the previous calendar year, to be clear. So what you would do is if you're at a November 1st renewal, you would look at the year of 2020 and count up your average of full-time employees. And if it is 50 or more, then you would be in the large group space. It makes a big difference whether you're small group or large group, access to the carriers, the underwriting process, it all really does change. So we're going to start with the small group market. So this is if you were in the previous calendar year, less than up to 50 full-time equivalents. There are 3 carrier options here in New Hampshire: Harvard Pilgrim Healthcare, Anthem Blue Cross Blue Shield, and United Healthcare. United Healthcare purchased Tufts Freedom Health in New Hampshire, just went to effect 1/1/21. So we did not lose a carrier in the state when Tufts decided to sell. That was very important because we would have then just been down to 2 carriers in the small group market. As far as an underwriting procedure, what these carriers do is they age-based rate, and that is it. The rates are based on the age of the subscriber and the age of their spouse and the 3 oldest dependents. So that's really how the rating structure comes out. It is not like large group where you would see 4-tiered rating, a single, a couple, a parent-child, and a family rate. Everybody's going to have their own rate associated with them. Every family is essentially going to have their own rate based on the age mix of that family. So it's a different underwriting process. It has nothing to do with individual claims or claims as a whole in the group. These are predetermined rates that come out quarterly by these various carriers, and this is how they come up with the overall premiums. To give you a sense of what plan designs are attractive or common in this market, in the small group market, the average deductible is around $4,000, which may sound like a lot. And certainly in the Northeast, we have deductible plans which run into the many thousands of dollars. Other parts of the country have vastly different averages in the deductible market. But we are hovering around $4,000 per member of the family as a deductible level. HSA plans are gaining in popularity. If you're not familiar with HSA plans, they're health savings account qualified plans. These plans work very differently than what your traditional insurance would offer to you, as far as you have co-pays to see your doctor, you have co-pays for prescription drugs. You only hit your deductible if you're going for something in the hospital, or you have something surgically related, or a CAT scan or an MRI. On HSA plans, the deductible is more upfront. If you have a prescription that's needed, you're paying the actual cost of that prescription. If you have a doctor's visit that is non-preventive in nature, you've got the sniffles and you go to your doctor, you're paying the actual cost of that visit. Visit to a primary care physician could be around $150. Specialist could be, $300 or more. So these plans work very differently. Once you reach your deductible, in a lot of cases, you're covered for the rest of the year for all medical and pharmacy related services. The attractive thing about these HSAs are, one, they are lower in cost. So the premiums are substantially less in many cases. And you do have the availability to set up that actual savings account. A health savings account, you could put monies in pre-tax, it grows tax-free, and it's never taxed if you use it for medical, dental, vision related services. So your HSA plans are gaining in popularity. I've been on it for probably the last 8 years. I tend to maximize the amount of money that I put into the health savings account, considering that we all use most of our healthcare dollars in the later portions of our life. So if you build up these balance in these savings accounts, it's not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing, and shows some foresight. Another tool that we're seeing used very often in New Hampshire, and with these high deductible plans of $4,000 and more, are health reimbursement arrangements, HRAs. And so what these are essentially is, an employer may choose to buy a higher deductible. They may be at a $2,000 or $3,000 deductible today, and they purchase a $4,000 or a $5,000 deductible and reimburse a back portion of that deductible for their employees if their employees reach that threshold. So it's a payment, a promise of payment by the employer to the employee if they reach a certain threshold in their deductible level. And a lot of employers are using this to raise the deductibles, save in premium, but offset that deductible so the employee's exposure is not affected. These are very popular plans in New Hampshire and have been for a number of years. Now, as we get into the higher and higher deductible space, these HRAs become more and more prevalent, but they are very popular and an easy way to save on premium, but maintain the lower deductible exposure to your employees. Now, in New Hampshire, there is still the marketplace option, AKA Obamacare. These particular plans are limited in network generally, so they tend to limit you to New Hampshire only. They exclude access down to Boston. As we all know, Boston is a hotbed for some of the best hospitals in the country. So generally, these plans are not as attractive as your group policies. But they still do exist, and it is an option for employees. I'm going to pivot to the large group market now. So if you have over 50 FTEs, there's actually a fourth carrier that participates in this segment, and it is Cigna. In this segment, there is demographic rating, but also experience rating. So what you have as far as accumulated aggregate claims, you and all of your employees together receive claim reports, usually called loss ratio reports, where it's simply an easy equation of what you paid in premium versus what you paid in claims. And then we'll give you also a listing of any high cost claimants. So anybody who had over $25,000 or $50,000 worth of claims themselves are listed on this report. No names are given, and it is just a very vanilla report that does not provide any PHI, any private health information, but it does give you an overall expectation of how the plan has run in the last 12 months. In this space, there are self-insured options. So we generally say that, if you have 100 or more employees on the plan, self-insurance could be a good option for you. You technically can go down to 50 enrolled in many of these self-insured programs. It does involve some risk. So it's no longer just paying a full premium and then having that loss ratio report at the end of the year. You're actually paying claims on a monthly basis, even more frequently than that in many cases. There are captive programs. So if you are a smaller employer in that 50 to 100 range and you are interested in self-insurance, medical captive programs have become very popular. This is a way in which you can go self-insured, but you're going self-insured amongst other employers. So you're in a pool, if you will, of employer groups that have chosen to go self-insured. It tends to make the stop loss insurance and some of the mechanisms behind the scenes less expensive, makes it a little bit more of an attractive offer. So just something else to consider if you're a group in that 50 to 100 space or even larger. You seem to be running very well year over year from a medical loss ratio perspective, and you want to investigate self-insured options. HRAs, as we had discussed in that last segment in the small group market, are used frequently in this space as well. Some of the differences you'll see in the large group space is that the plans must meet affordability testing. So, 1094, 1095 reporting requirements come into play here. You need to make sure that your plans are qualified and affordable. So there are some more compliance items to consider when you're in the large group space. What we're seeing in this space as well is technology advancements are reducing paper processes. So particularly during the pandemic, a lot of the paper enrollment forms and procedures and obtaining election forms from employees has pivoted more often than not now to online enrollments, either governed by your payroll company or maybe perhaps your broker or consultant has a platform that you could use to get yourself away from paper and onto an electronic enrollment process. So if you're thinking about offering benefits, maybe you haven't in the past, we know how competitive the marketplace is to attract employees. So we're finding more and more our clients coming to us and saying, what can we do to improve our plans or offer health insurance for the first time or offer life and disability for the first time. Now more than ever, the employers here in New Hampshire need to be competitive in this space. Employees have a lot of options out there. So we're finding that there is more interest in putting in a coverage that hadn't existed in the past. Some of just the groundwork items that you would need is to prepare as a census information with names, dates of birth, gender, family status, and zip code. Whether you want to offer medical and dental, what types of plans you might want to consider offering. And then as an employer, how much you can contribute to these plans. That makes it very important. You need to make this affordable for the employees. Also life and disability. These are easy ways to put in pretty low costing plans for employees. You can make them voluntary where the employee pays the full portion of the premiums for these life and disability programs. And when I say disability, short-term disability, long-term disability, again, census information would be needed, but employer contributions lead to better pricing in this segment. So if you are able to contribute towards the life and disability programs, especially on the life insurance, you could give your employees $25,000, $50,000 worth of life insurance for very small dollars. So we are finding employers trying to be more competitive in this space. So that's my presentation, trying to give you a sense of what's going on here in New Hampshire in the marketplace, both from a small group and a large group perspective. I'm going to stop sharing at this point. We're going to hold questions to the end of the meeting, and I'm going to give it over to Dan Fairley from Bangor Payroll, and he's going to talk a little bit about payroll systems.
Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, great. So thank you, Todd. I'm Dan Fairley. I'm a payroll development officer with Bangor Payroll. We're a division of Bangor Savings Bank. And we've got locations throughout northern New England. Most of them are in Maine. We've got several locations in New Hampshire, but I deal with our payroll offering and payroll department. So I work with companies from hiring for the first time, and as small as as small as hiring for the first time up to, hundreds of employees. A little bit about myself. I've been in the industry for 8 years. Prior to being with Bangor Payroll, I was at a larger payroll company, and it'll be 4 years in April that I've been with Bangor Payroll. I was married in June. I got married in June to my wife, Charlotte. We bought a new house in July in Ware, New Hampshire. And we just started sharing that we're going to be having a baby at the end of March. So I don't think I'll have much time for my hobby of woodworking. So a little bit about myself and, what I do. A little bit about Bangor Payroll. Currently, our department, we have about 100 employees in the bank. The bank itself probably has about 1,200 employees. What makes us a little unique from other smaller payroll companies is we have our own in-house tax department. So larger payroll companies, they'll typically do the payroll tax filings themselves. Smaller payroll companies, for the most part, will farm it out to a third party. But something that we do, and really it has to do with the fact that we're FDIC regulated and we have to keep everything very secure, is we do all of our own payroll tax filing, which is nice. We offer a full suite of services as far as an HRIS system goes. So payroll, time and attendance, applicant tracking, employee onboarding, benefit administration, scheduling, performance tracking. So really we can offer the full gamut as far as, somebody that just needs payroll or somebody that needs, a full suite of services. So being in the industry for 8 years, technology across all companies has really developed quite a bit. And really what I've noticed is the all-in-one system is becoming more and more popular. So, the benefit of that is, when you add an employee to the system, really what's going to happen is they're going to get added everywhere. So instead of having, different systems for all the different tasks of your growing company, being able to have that employee, either add to the system through an HR professional or your own in-house HR person, or they self-onboard. Once they go through that approval process, they're in every place. So one of the drawbacks that I find of some of the competitors that I come up against is, they want to be your everything. So they want to be your payroll company, they want to be your outsourced HR provider, they want to be your benefit administrator, they want to do your retirement plan. Although that is convenient and it does work in some instances and it can work quite well, what I find is when something goes wrong with one of those segments or all of those segments, being able to, make changes as need be can be very difficult. So I always say, staying nimble, being able to, do the things that you need to do to, one, help your growing business, or two, fix something that's broken. That's very important to be able to do. So the trends as far as technology developing and making things easier for employees and employers, I think that's fantastic. But, being able to have experts help you at what they specialize in, I think that's even more critical. So again, being able to stay nimble, do what's best for you and your employees is always the best thing. So as far as technology goes, it sounds basic, but, I always like to tell the story of, the 200 employee company that does the payroll themselves and it's still a paper process. So being able to have employees access their information, whether it's their schedule, pay stub, personal benefit information, if an employee moves, how easy is it for them to update their own address in the system? So little things like that can really make a big difference in employees' life and make it much simpler for them. And I always like to lean on the fact that, using technology really makes for an easy process for the employees. So for example, even onboarding, it's always a very stressful time for an employee and an employer, because you're just hiring this person. You hope they're going to be a good fit. The employee, they're coming on board, they're hoping they're going to be a good fit for the position as well. So having a streamlined process that's the same for all of the employees just makes it that much easier to get them onboarded, up and running. It's efficient. I always say that compliance starts at the onboarding process. So making sure that you've got, all the correct paperwork that you need, all of the information that the employees need as far as the position, the company, what the policies and procedures are. Those are always very important things to know right up front. So, there isn't a question about, hey, if this happens, what do I do? If that happens, what do I do? They know about it right away. So the other thing that companies, especially right now in today's market, how easy is it for somebody to find and apply for your position? Is there an online application tool where they can go in and upload a resume, fill out any screening questions, anything like that? Or is it the same process of emailing a resume to an email address? So that can work, and it does work quite well for a time being. But as companies continue to grow, one, it really gives a good first impression for an employee if they can see like, hey, this is a legitimate company, like I can fill out all this information online. Helps you attract and retain top talent, being able to do that. So it's utilizing the technology that's out there really helps employers take the next step and just be the employer of choice, basically. So I always find this is something that I come across quite often, especially in New Hampshire. I know we're a little, if you look at some of the other states, it seems we're a little bit behind on the times in developing, or not developing, but using some of this technology. So there's definitely some pros and cons to each, I guess you should say. The homegrown system versus standard technology. So one, when you have that homegrown system, it is just that. It's homegrown. It's bits and pieces kind of put together over time. So I call it the siloed effect, where you've got all these different systems put into place so that you can get the employee from point A to point B. They go through the process. And it is flawed. It's definitely flawed because oftentimes you have that one key employee internally that handles that whole process. And if something happens to that employee, whether they leave or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden you've got a broken system, and that one person that knew how to do everything is no longer there. So companies often are in big trouble when that one person that they really relied on is no longer there. So being able to have a system in place prior to that happening, because it's much easier to train a new employee on a standard technology versus hey, this is the way we do things, all the ins and outs of a very antiquated system. It really can be quite stressful for everybody within the organization. So having that put into place so that you don't have that one pitfall, one, it keeps you in compliance, and two, it really makes your company a lot more secure as far as making sure that everything's done the correct way. Obviously, with putting a system into place, everybody always looks at pricing. I always like to give the example of, there was a large company that I was working with, and when I presented pricing to them, they go, why would we pay for this system when I could just hire, an employee to pay them that same amount so that, I can have an extra employee on the payroll and they'll handle all this stuff. And it was kind of a funny conversation to see happen internally with the CEO, CFO, where they had something like that. And that was the reason why they were looking at our software. So it is an additional hard cost to have something like this put into place, but what they gain is security, ease of use, and just overall, it's much easier on the company. So oftentimes when I'm called in to meet with a company, there's a few different things going on. So typically what I try to look for is, what is their motivation for wanting to look at Bangor Payroll? What's the need for them to want to change what they're doing today? And, is it, your current providers, too many errors going on, whether it's the payroll or they can't get the system to work the way they promised it could work. Are you looking to cut down time? As one of your key employees spending too much time on administrative work when they're much better off trying to develop the employees, put in new policies and procedures that can help develop employees and get things done quicker. Do you have a lot of paper files? That's the other thing. In the age of COVID, we're trying to get rid of paper, less touches. More people are opting to have employees punch in and out on a phone or on their own personal computer, so that there's no time cards that need to be calculated and touched from person to person. And the other thing is when companies are growing. So I think this is pretty important for growing organizations. Is a lot of times it's not that we're called in too late, but we should have been called in a lot earlier, where we can put a system into place and the system have it grow with you, as opposed to implementing when you've got a few hundred employees. So it's much easier to implement a system when maybe you've got 1 to 20 employees and be able to turn on different functions of the system, as opposed to, hey, we've got 250 employees now, all of a sudden we need X, Y, and Z. We can do that, obviously, but it's much easier to build from the ground up, as opposed to putting everything in place at once. So last slide, and this is again something that's very, very important, and really one of the reasons that I'm at Bangor Payroll is the balance between technology and service. So there's a lot of really good payroll companies out there that have fantastic technology, but where we get our clients is where companies fail on the service side of things. So something that's very unique about Bangor Payroll is we give all of our customers a single point of contact. So being able to provide small businesses that support that they need to get their questions answered, very important. I'd say it's almost more important than the technology, but having that nice balance between both, that's really what our customers are looking for. And really that's kind of the trend in New Hampshire as far as what businesses are looking for. So thank you very much for the time and listening. I'm going to hand you off to Michelle Gray. She's going to take very, very good care of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Dan. That was awesome. Hold on one second. I'm going to share my screen as soon as my computer comes back up. It just kind of froze a little bit here. I can give you a brief overview. So I'm Michelle Gray. I am the owner of HR Synergy, and I established the company in 2008. I've been in the HR industry for over 25 plus years. And I have had a generalist background in working in all areas of HR. And I love the opportunity to consult with multiple organizations and help them to be compliant with the Department of Labor laws. And I'm really sorry that my presentation is not coming up here. But with the labor laws and developing process and procedure and so forth, and to Dan's point, automation is such a fantastic tool for small businesses and large businesses alike, mostly because it really does organize everything for you and keep things in one place and help you to maintain compliance. And for me, that's like top priority, because I don't want the Department of Labor knocking on my door, and I'm sure that you don't want them knocking on your door as well. So that's why I do what I do, and love it with a passion, unbelievably, which is crazy. But all right, I think I've got my screen ready to share. And again, my apologies for that technical difficulty. Can everyone see the screen, I believe?
Yep, looks good.
Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate it. So again, we focus on labor law compliance. We also do like an HR analysis to determine what type of processes and procedures you have in place. We do this for businesses that have either one employee or 300 or more employees, but our primary target is 20 to 100. Once you get beyond 100 employees, you really want to begin thinking about having someone in-house to manage your HR processes. We also do what's called a MARC Department of Labor audit to help you to identify what you're doing well and what you're not doing well, and what your potential fines would be if the Department of Labor came knocking on your door. We also will review policies for you, as well as develop employee handbooks as needed, and do some management training. Oftentimes in small businesses, as you grow, you've got people who are doing multiple jobs and then they transition to another job, and it may be a job in management. And helping them to transition from working with their peers to managing and supervising their peers is really important to make sure that they succeed, and that they're respected by their new team members. We also help with employee development. We offer full service recruiting, employment process automation with Bamboo HR, and very similar to what Dan was talking about, and I'll show you a little bit more about that after, but automation is really becoming the wave of employment processes for many reasons. And for me, my top-notch thing is compliance and making sure that everything is done consistently. And these systems are set up to ensure that happens. And then we also offer an HR at your service membership hotline. So that's just a monthly fee that you pay, a small fee that businesses pay just to call and ask a question. It's not project-based. So it could be as simple as, we're looking to hire our first employee. What are the things that we need to know? What type of forms? And we can send all of that along. So it really is a great resource for someone who doesn't really have a lot of HR needs, but has some questions, and we're less expensive than asking an attorney. Our passion is to help small businesses, the mid-sized businesses, with effective employment practices, as well as keeping them off the Department of Labor's naughty list. So I already introduced myself, so I'll skip over this piece. So one of the many reasons that I recommend that employers get rid of the paper, I'm sure many have experienced through COVID, the challenges of accessing information that's in the office when you're working remotely. This really eliminates that and makes it easier for multiple people to have access to information that they need. Maybe managers need certain information regarding their employees and so forth, maybe like regarding time off or those types of things, or even just like to approve time cards. So automated processes just make it much more easier to do that. And automated for Bamboo HR, we use it primarily for recruiting and hiring. So it does have a full applicant tracking system where you can post your positions. It automatically posts directly with Indeed, LinkedIn, and now ZipRecruiter as well. And it gives you a candidate base. So if you have applicants who are applying for positions, but they're not quite fit for this position, they may be for something else. There's a link that you can also put on your website that will draw people to apply directly to Bamboo HR. It also has a fantastic onboarding process. So onboarding is so much more than filling out the right paperwork, right? When someone's hired, that's super important to make sure, you've got your I-9 documentation and your W-4s and all of that. But there's more to it. There's more of like the training pieces and the check-ins and, offering benefits when they're able to. So the onboarding process in Bamboo is actually set up with those timelines and who's responsible for them. So it automatically notifies them, hey, it's time to offer Jane Doe benefits, or it's time to do a 90-day review with John Smith. So it really is a fantastic thing. And then, the benefits automation is really more or less forms that they can fill out online directly, and you can sign them and then send them right off to your broker. Unfortunately, there's no link to send them to the broker, but it really does still streamline the process, and then everything is stored in the employee's file online. We also have the opportunity to do timekeeping. So if you're doing those crazy time cards and so forth, the system allows employees to check in right online or on their mobile app, which is super easy. And the mobile app does allow to identify the location that people are checking in. So if you need to make sure that someone's not sitting home on the couch when they say they're somewhere else, you have the ability to do that as well, which is super cool. You can also, it has a training platform. So if you have very specific training that you need employees to complete, you can put them in the platform and set dates when they need to complete them, as well as reminders. There is a performance management module, which is fantastic. I'm sure that most of you are not great fans of the paper process or even the performance process, because I know that's one thing that tends to slide a lot with organizations because we're so busy doing everything. However, within this process, it really engages both the employee and the manager to collaborate on what goals are and how they're meeting expectations and what they need to do to make that happen. And they have regular check-ins and so forth. And they do it either on a quarterly basis, biannually, 6 months or annually. And then we also handle like the employee relations through here as well. So if someone's getting a written warning and so forth, we are having the conversation, but we're backing it up with documentation. Documentation is so important when dealing with employee issues as well as performance. Primarily, if you decide to terminate somebody, even though we are at will employment, we need to be able to prove that we are not terminating someone for a discriminatory reason. And that's where our documentation comes into play. That also helps in the event that someone is trying to apply for unemployment. That shouldn't be. If they were terminated for gross misconduct, they wouldn't be eligible. If they're terminated for performance and you have no documentation, they will collect unemployment. But if you have documentation showing that you've had the conversations with them about what they need to do, and ultimately if they don't improve, they could lose their job, then most likely they would not collect unemployment, and that would not potentially increase your unemployment tax rate. We also do offboarding within Bamboo. Again, offboarding is so much more than just terminating employee. It's, letting payroll know what their final check should be, and to turn them off from payroll. It's also, if they have any benefits, to let the benefit broker know what needs to be done there. Send out COBRA letters if we need to do that. All of those steps can be set up in the onboarding process to make sure that we don't miss anything at all. So some of the benefits that I believe of automating employment processes is definitely time savings, consistency. It takes up less space. If you think about, file cabinets, I remember back when I used to work in-house for organizations, we would just run out of file cabinet space constantly because the more you hire. And we do keep files for a long, long time in HR because things pop up many years later that we need to have access to. So having it all online makes that much simpler and takes up much less space. Automated checklists, I think that is probably greatest for me when you have so many different pieces moving. Just having a checklist that tells you what you need to do is outstanding. And if you don't get those checklists done, you've got automatic reminders as well. They also provide great data and analytics. So you can take a look even just to see, what's your hiring trends been? What's your turnover rates? Where are things, going well? Where do they need to improve a little bit? There also has satisfaction surveys and so forth on there. So you can really engage your team to gain that information. And again, it's definitely the most organized way to handle your employment processes all the way from onboarding throughout the life cycle to termination. And it completely reduces your risk of non-compliance if you follow all of these implementation processes. So that's all I have for now. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen and give you back to Stephanie.
Great. Thank you for all three of you for the great presentations. We're going to use the chat. If you have any questions, you can pop them right in there and we can answer them before we go. Just before we get started with the chat, just wanted to throw a question out there. So are there ways as healthcare consumers that we can save money when accessing medical care?
Yeah, so this kind of drills down to more of the member side. So as an individual member of a healthcare plan, there are certainly ways you can save money. So there's really three big ticket items here. Generic drugs whenever possible. Okay, so have your physician write the generic If they don't write the generic, pharmacies will generally fill the generic for you anyways if you ask them to. Secondarily, lab work. If you have lab work to be done, if you avoid a hospital setting, in many cases, it's going to be about 1/5 the cost. So you can have labs done at a Quest Diagnostics or a LabCorp, an independent lab center for a significant savings. And then thirdly, you can use surgical centers or radiology centers, independent centers, instead of hospitals for your minor surgeries and your CAT scans, your MRIs. The price tag on those are, again, significantly less than they would be in a hospital setting. So 3 ways you can kind of save as a consumer.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. Just talking about like the automation process, what percentage of small businesses use an automation process and see that value?
So you find that across the US, we've got about 70% of business leaders that believe that the automation tool is most effective in helping them build more effective teams. And 45% of HR departments right now are using them. And if they're not, they're persuading their business owners to implement them, because it really allows more time for the HR department as well to do the other things that the organization needs done that can't be done automated, like deal with employee issues that come up from day to day.
Yeah, that's great. So again, if there's any questions, you can pop them in the chat. And I just had one more, and just give people an opportunity to put their questions in if they have any. So is there any benefit with the new year coming up for making any of these changes, payroll or otherwise? Are there any benefits to that, or?
For most companies, the idea of switching in January is the best. The reason for that is when you switch payroll providers, there is the year-to-date payroll and tax information that you need to upload into the system. So right now is my busiest time of year because I'm meeting with so many companies in anticipation of implementing before January. So then when that first check date comes in January or in the new year, you're ready to process payroll with your new provider. So this is a very exciting time of year for me, absolutely. And then it is possible I do it, throughout the course of the year. Depends upon the circumstances that the company is in. We can get somebody started for payroll whenever, but ideally it's either going to be a quarter break or a new year. And Todd, to comment on your piece there, I recently got an ultrasound done with my wife, and we had it done at a hospital as opposed to a specialized place. And it is a lot cheaper to get it done at a specialized place as opposed to a hospital.
That's the truth. I think we've all experienced that in one way or another.
And I'd like to add to what Dan said in regards to like the best time. I agree that like 1/1 is the best time, even from an HR perspective. If when you think about like time off plans and so forth, this is the best time to do that at the beginning of the year versus having to go back and figure out, if you're manually tracking and so forth, to go back and figure out what people have. So it's best to start off the new year with the automation.
Well, that's great. Well, thank you again, Michelle and Dan and Todd. We appreciate your expertise in this area. I'd like to also again thank Cross Insurance for sponsoring this webinar today. It will be recorded again and put on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check it out if you want to review anything. And thank you all for joining us today.